Gentlemen, NC State, the pack is at a crossroads once again. They will not be in Charlotte after an 0-2 week when we said on this program a week ago that they needed to be perfect. They need to be winning games at this time of year. Where does Kevin Keats, where does Boo Corrigan go from here? Kerry, we'll start out with you.
Well, piggybacking off our prior topic here, I think this is a clear question of where they're at in their contract. And obviously, we know why they're even in this position to begin with, because all of the chatter and the noise and the smoke was that last year was going to be Kevin's year. Speculation runs rampant in this day and age, right? With everyone being a media expert, even the traditional media like ourselves being able to really have an idea of what's happening and having questions asked directly to the sources and not just speculating. But be that as it may, Kevin put himself in a position after last year's run to earn the right to build on that. The question really remains, actually two questions remain, and I think David can really attest to this, having seen games in the state even before Kevin got here, before specifically to Coach Keith. Where does this contract put Boo Corrigan in assessing where the immediate future of NC State is? Because the one thing that you can do is you can revamp your entire roster right now. You don't have to wait anymore. You know, it used to be taboo for coaches to say to a kid, you might be better off someplace else. You couldn't force kids to leave by way of the old guard. Now you have coaches basically saying, like, we're just going to go get all new guys next year, which for a guy on the roster is like, well, wait a minute. Am I on a one-year deal now? Like, it's amazing the rhetoric that's out there coming from the coaches and in some cases from the kids in their social channels, because that's their only voice, because they're not holding press conferences. They don't have podcasts where they can say whatever they want and edit it out like the pro guys can and do right now, although that's probably coming down the pike too when you think about it, is what can Boo do if he needs to either restructure this? Were there metrics put in place that take some things away? Does not making the ACC tournament actually eliminate one of those years that extended him? No one really knows, although I think a lot of these things, correct me if I'm wrong, being a state school or public record, we may be able to find these things out. Be that as it may, just from a rudimentary standpoint, the way that Kevin has decided to play at NC State is clearly parallel to the success that he had at UNC Wilmington. And there's something to be said for that. That's how he coaches. That's how he sets his program up. That's a success that he has. The only difference being is he can get a different caliber player. Although the difference in how you're constructing that roster right now has changed. And it may be hurting Kevin Keats, because that seems to me that you want to develop those guys into being upperclassmen and really understanding how to play as ball-dominant guards. That's the way that Kevin has been playing since he got here. What you turn around and see the most success he's had is with a dynamic big guy. Now, how he got there is with the guards, and obviously McConnell making the shot to get him in a position to make the run in the ACC tournament. But the success to the Final Four is largely on the shoulders of DJ Burns. However that happened is irrelevant. I think Kevin needs to step back and really assess, can I keep making a forward march in the current constraints with this dynamic guard, shoot at all costs, do what you need to do way with a couple of nice big men sprinkled in? Or do we need to make wholesale changes in how we construct a roster because we can, just for life support? Or does Boo take the 10,000-foot view and say, listen, here's the decision. You need to do this, and we'll invest in this to be able for you to do that. Or the investment, unfortunately, is going to come in buying him out. So it's the relationship between Boo and Kevin that really needs to be explained, understood, and we're not really privy to that outside of those two gentlemen. But for the Wolfpack Nation, I think the question you need to ask is, one, Kevin, are you going to now change and make an adjustment? Because you can. You don't have to develop a big man to go with these guards. You can go identify in the portal that group of kids, sell them on the opportunity to come in, and maybe a change even more so now than before. Or is it just, we're going to ride it till it's over, and then the guy that's going to decide that is going to be someone else, and that someone else is the AD. And obviously, from a business perspective, this decision that Boo has to make. It's an interesting dynamic right now, given the results that have happened this year with NC State on the heels of just a year ago making that run, and the ability that you have to change things more now than ever before. I think these 2 weeks without having to go to Charlotte to really get yourself ready will show, one, were they ready for this? Have they been doing things seeing the results, knowing they were going to be in this position to get into that portal prepared? Or are they going to be reactive and try to go find what they think is the best guy? And we know that sometimes doesn't always fit. There's a lot of things that go into doing this right now to get the right guys, even a short amount of time. It's a daunting time right now for Coach Keats and Boo. Nevertheless, doesn't make the Wolfpack faithful any more happy that they're not going to be in Charlotte, and certainly not in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, one thing to remember here is that it is really, really unusual for a coach to get fired uh, a year after a truly special season. And a lot of Wolfpack fans forget, if they're hammering Kevin Keats, he went to two straight NCAA tournaments. When you go to two straight NCAA tournaments and one of them results in a run to the Final Four, almost always, if you have a bad year the next year, you get the benefit of the doubt. Now, two straight bad years can change things, especially in this microwave society and this rebuild your team every year version of college basketball. Remember, when Jim Larinaga had the best 2-year run in the history of Miami Hurricanes basketball, one was the Final Four, one was the Elite Eight, and then had a horrifically bad next year. He didn't get fired. But why did he get the benefit of the doubt? Because in the context of taking a school to a place that had truly never been, and he did it twice in a row, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. Now, this year, of course, is a second straight really bad year for Miami, and he chose to retire. He was also in his mid-70s. So 2 bad years after greatness is a lot different than 1 bad year after greatness. And that's why I don't think Boo Corrigan is ready to pull the trigger on what would I think right now be the neighborhood of an $8 million buyout. A lot of folks, that contract is public. For just the long story short, legally, is that if a coach's compensation is $3 million plus, but his base compensation is $1.5 million, usually the full $3 million plus is not guaranteed. It's usually that base stuff times the number of years remaining. Well, Kevin Keats exercised that option. Remember, it was built into his contract. Hey, you do these things. You as the coach get to decide whether you want that 2-year extension. He took it all the way through 2030, which means after our current season, he has 5 years left. So if his base compensation is almost roughly $1.5 million, let's call it, times 5, that's $7.5 million. And there may be some other smaller guarantees. So let's call it $8 million or so. That's not like Dave Doran's $15 million buyout as the football coach, but it's still $8 million, right? I mean, that's not found under the in the couch cushions and under the carpet. You guys keep, of course, as you would, the longtime AD and the longtime head coach. Of course, the nature of this relationship matters between Boo Corrigan and Kevin Keats. What does Boo think of Kevin as a coach? Does he think last year was truly a lightning in a bottle situation? Does Boo, who's been around the block, does he believe that there's a fair question about whether the approach to basketball with that guard-dominated concept that Coach Keating described, it absolutely worked at UNC Wilmington. I mean, that 3-year run was maybe the greatest 3-year run in the history of UNC Wilmington basketball. But in the CAA, you can win with a lot of creative athletic guards it's harder to win in the ACC with that approach to basketball. What does Boo think about that? What does Kevin think about that? Some coaches are willing to pivot and say, yeah, I need to reevaluate certain things from my staff to my X's and O's. And certainly, guys, I'll end on this. All schools we follow are headed for a fascinating conversation. Now, Coach being the longtime Santa Clara guy, it would not have impacted him as much in that context, or even Kevin Keats at UNC Wilmington, which doesn't have football. When we get to this new world later this calendar year for the first time in NCAA history, assuming a judge approves the House lawsuit settlement, $20+ million is going to be available from inside the athletic department to sprinkle among all of your teams and athletes. How will the debate go when Dave Doran says to Boo Corrigan, I need a big chunk of that change to be competitive and relevant in the ACC? And then Kevin Keats is going to Boo Corrigan and saying, I need my chunk to be competitive in the ACC and men's basketball. And then more than a dozen other coaches in sports that don't turn profits are saying, well, we need at least a little. If, Elliott Avent's run a heck of a baseball program, he wants something at NC State. So how do those decisions get made? And guys, there's always the scenario, if this House settlement is approved, book it. We are going to see more examples where coaches choose to leave for reasons related to the athletic department's decisions on the questions that I'm raising. Again, I don't know which way it's going to go. There might be an athletic director that says, hey, football is our biggest moneymaker. You get, 60% of all our name, image, likeness money. Men's basketball, you're kind of second in line. You get 25%. And hey, all you other sports on campus, collectively, you get 15%. It could be a lot less than that. But let's not forget, and it's specific to NC State, when Herb Sendek concluded that he was not appreciated enough after going to 5 straight NCAA tournaments as the head coach of the Wolfpack in men's basketball, and he didn't like the way fans talked about him and treated him and his family. I had a front row seat for a lot of that craziness. I personally witnessed Wolfpack fans cursing him as he was walking out of the ACC tournament. Guy who took him to 5 straight NCAA tournaments. I'm personally aware of his family being harassed at grocery stores. That's one set of reasons. Could Kevin Keatts say they've already forgotten I took him to 2 straight NCAA tournaments? Could Kevin Keatts say, remember the 1 year COVID, there was no tournament. So in his 8-year tenure, he's taken him to 3 NCAA tournaments out of 7, and he had other postseason trips beyond that. Did they forget that just because I crashed back to earth this year? And maybe he doesn't like the answer to how much NIL money you're going to get. And by the way, there's outside money that's not going to go away. How much support does Wolfpack men's basketball have from third-party NIL? We talked on previous shows. The Wolfpack needed to capitalize in the transfer portal on their greatest postseason since the 1980s. Did they? They got 5 transfers and 2 worked out. Marcus Hill's a good player, not an elite player. Dontrez Styles, formerly of UNC and Georgetown, good player, not an elite player. When I fill out that 15-man All-ACC ballot, there's not going to be a Wolfpack player on there. Are there nice players? Yes. But Duke's got several All-ACC guys. Clemson has multiple All-ACC guys. Louisville has multiple All-ACC guys. They're the 3 teams that are going to the NCAA tournament. You can't have just a bunch of nice players. You need some great players. And then you need to coach them up beyond that. And, of course, none of that happened at NC State this year. That's why we're asking these questions. But I don't think NC State's, ready to drop the guillotine on Kevin Keatts, although he would enter next season realizing that he can't have 2 years like this in a row, or his head would be on the chopping block.
As a former AD, I can tell you that if I'm Boo Corrigan, what I'm most concerned about right now is not Kevin Keatts or Dave Doran. It's about how the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is able to put all that money into football and all that money into basketball, hiring GMs and all these other staffs, and I'm not. Because he's not only behind the SEC and the Big Ten as a member of the ACC, but NC State Athletics is also now behind their own cousin, brother, whatever you want to call it, over in Chapel Hill in terms of spending on athletics, and the revenues aren't too terribly different outside of the NCAA basketball tournament shares. And both teams have been to Final Fours within the last few years, so that's not too terribly different. So that right there is a big thing that perhaps we will have to do our deep dive on in the weeks and months ahead. NC Pork, raising the bacon, raising the bar.